guys, and welcome back to Interview MedMas. Welcome to day 13. We're way past the midway now. We have another 8 days to go, counting this one. And today's question is going to be on the same theme as yesterday's. It's going to be ethics and tolerance of ambiguity. And the question that we're going to talk about today is, do you agree with abortion? What are the ethical issues here? So again, pause the video, jot down a few ideas on a piece of paper, and then we'll regroup after. Okay, so like every single other day, we are going to be looking at the purpose of the question first, just to make sure that we're all going in the same direction. So the purpose of this question, do you agree with abortion? What are the ethical issues here? Is there for the interviewer to check if the interviewee is able to talk about this ethical topic and appraise both sides. You know, they want to know about your opinion. So they want to be able to know what are your thoughts on abortion, but then they want to make sure that you're also able to be like, yes, this is my opinion, but I also understand, or I also have arguments for the opposite. They don't want you to be just, this is what it is supposed to be like and everything else is wrong, because that doesn't really show that you can be, you know, neutral. They want to see that you can be neutral while having an opinion, if that makes sense. So we're going to be doing that. So the way I would answer this question, since the first question was, do you agree with abortion? Let's tackle that first. So you have to like sit down and with your thoughts and figure out, do you personally agree with abortion? Is that something that you agree with? If it's not, maybe develop why you don't agree with that. And if it is, again, develop as well why it is something you agree with. So I said that personally, I agree with abortion. And I think that, again, if we go back to the ethics, autonomy, justice, non-maleficence, and beneficence, doing and agreeing with abortion is increasing the autonomy of the patient. If the mother wants to abort, then that should be her decision to make if she has capacity to do so, okay? But I would add a caveat, and I would have to make sure that it is the best possible decision in the mother's interest, so you're doing beneficence, but also in the baby's interest. You're, again, doing beneficence, and that's a bit harder to, like, explain in the baby's interest. And the thing is, I would also talk about the consequences of not giving that autonomy to the patient. If you force people to not be able to abort, then the baby could be unhappy and lead an unhappy life, lead a life where that, you know, they just didn't have all the opportunities they could have had if the baby was born a few years later or not born at all, if that makes sense. Why bring people on this earth if you know that you can't provide them with the best quality of life, okay? And then another thing that I wanted to talk about was that sometimes mothers might, if they really want to abort and they know for a fact that that's the best option for them, they might like go to get an abortion by dangerous means that will put their life in danger, because they just know that having this baby right now is not the best solution. So that would be how I would start it. Talk about my views of abortion, say if I agree with it or if I don't, and then explain why, in my case, I agree with it, okay? Develop my point. And then I would move on to a more neutral point of view to answering the next question, which is, what are the ethical issues here? And again, every single time there's an ethics question, I always want to put back the ethical pillars, show the interviewer that I know what the ethical pillars are. So you would talk about beneficence, non-maleficence, justice, and autonomy. So in my first point, I have developed autonomy a little bit, but saying again that if you do allow abortion, you are increasing the autonomy of the patient. The patient has the right to make a choice for their own lives, okay? Then you can move on to talking about beneficence. You want to do good. So if you assume that the mother wants to, you know, abort, and they know for a fact that having that child right now is not the right option, you are increasing beneficence. You are doing good for that patient. However, if you take the baby's circumstance, you are killing a life, or a potential life, okay? And then you would talk about non-maleficence. So ending the life of a baby or what could become a baby later on is not necessarily doing good. But again, if you take the mother's perspective and she knows that that's not what she wants, then you are doing good and you're not doing harm. Do you see what I mean? So it's like one of those things where you really have to like sit down with the terms and really try to talk about it from every single angle. And then for justice, you could potentially argue, if you want to, that putting an unwanted baby in the world will, first of all, potentially lead to that baby having not as a fulfilling of a life, have a really potentially traumatic childhood, which will lead the baby to have a lot of traumatic experiences and a lot of trauma to deconstruct as they grow up, but also which means that if you put an unwanted baby in the world, it's an extra person to be taken care of, just by the government, schools and all of that, and that is taking some resources that could be given to somebody else. But then again, it's a bit difficult to explain that, but it is something you could talk about for justice. And then potentially the other thing that I would do would be to talk about the arguments for and against abortion as well. So I'm going to like say 3 or 4 for each category. Arguments for, it empowers women, again, to give them a choice and control over their own bodies. You can also argue that a fetus is only a person when it's viable. So before 25 weeks or 24, I don't remember, you wouldn't consider that a person. So you are allowed to do an abortion before that fetus would be able to survive in the exterior environment. There's arguments as well that say that fetuses don't feel pain. You need a cortex, like in your brain, you need the cortex to feel pain, and it's not developed yet at that point in time. So you wouldn't be doing any harm because they wouldn't feel any pain. Also, there's less mental health issues for the mother and the child later on if you do allow to do that. And again, another argument is that abortion just physically is quite safe of a procedure. And then you would move on, obviously, to talking about the arguments against. And the first main argument is abortion is murder. At the end of the day, you could consider that abortion is murder. You are killing a fetus that could become a child later on. And it goes against nature. Animals don't have abortion. And so it is a very human thing and it goes against nature to do that. Some people believe in the right to life above the right of the control of the body, and that begins at conception. So once there is a baby, the right of life of that child or that fetus embryo takes over the right of the mother to own her own body. And that's an argument you could also justify and explain. Some people, again, that kind of goes against the thing that we said before, 4 arguments for, but some people say that fetuses actually feel pain throughout the abortion procedure because the spinal reflexes allow the fetus to feel pain. And some people have found that, and at that point the spinal cord is done. So you could say that the fetus feels pain, but that again, you will never be able to know for sure, but that's an argument you could say. And then again, you could talk about the Hippocratic Oath. You would say that you would do no harm, and killing an embryo, killing a fetus is harm, potentially, and that goes against the Hippocratic Oath. Again, something I think that would be interesting to consider and potentially talk about is abortion really depends on what you consider as life, When does life start? When does this amount of cells become a person? Some people say that there is life and there is a person from conception. So when there's 2 cells, that's the person, and that's already, if you take the morning after pill, you're already doing abortion, and so it should be illegal. Some people say that life starts when the embryo is implanted, but then when would you know that the embryo is implanted? Again, then there's some people that say that life starts when the embryo starts moving. But then again, when will you really know when the embryo starts moving? Especially first-time mothers aren't really able to appraise the first few times they feel their baby moving because they're not really sure if that was, a baby that was moving or not. Some people say that they consider life as when the embryo could be viable, and that's what they do in the UK. They put the limit of abortion at 24 weeks because they believe that at 24 weeks, if a baby was born, they could be viable. And some other people would justify that you become a person when brain activity starts. But then again, how do you calculate that? So all of these things I think would be things to be mentioning at some point during your answer, saying that the ethical aspect of abortion really also comes from the fact of when do you consider life to start. Certain religions think that life starts when the embryo starts moving, and that's when abortion should be illegal. Anything before that is not abortion in their eyes because that's not a person, that's just a few cells together. So it is really important to talk about that, I think. And then another thing that I think would be really, really important to talk about is defining what a person is. So I remember I found this definition, and it says that a person is a human being regarded as an individual. So at that point in time, you would be counted in the census, okay? Every few years, government will count how many people are in the country, how many people are of this ethnicity and all of that. But no fetus is counted in the census because they're not considered as people yet. So again, I think that answering this question was quite not all over the place because I think that talking about ethics is quite difficult just generally, but I think that if you start by answering what your personal opinions about abortion are, justifying those, then you move on to what the ethical issues here are. So you talk about the 4 pillars, and then I think it might be interesting to then move on to talking about the arguments for and against abortion, and then you might want to talk about the whole aspect of when do you consider a person, when does life start. You either want to talk about that at the end to add on to your points, or you might want to talk about that just after talking about the 4 pillars. That's really a decision that you have to make, and I think with this video you probably have hopefully a lot more arguments or things to talk about for abortion. And now it's time for you to sit down with a piece of paper and see where you want to slot in different things. What are the things that you've already knew that you want to add to that as well? I don't think this was a proper answer. It was more a regroupment of many things that you could talk about in an answer and incorporate in your answer, if that makes sense. So I hope that today made sense, that it was helpful and useful for you, that you got a lot more to talk about now about abortion and all of the ethical aspects of it as well. And if you did enjoy this video, please subscribe to my channel, like this video, and share this video with other people, other medical students that are going through interviews really soon. And I will see you guys tomorrow for day 14. Bye guys.